The Septuagint Bible with Apocrypha in English. Genesis, chapter 38. And it came to pass at that time that Judas went down from his brethren, and came as far as to a certain man of Odolam, whose name was Eros. And Judas saw there the daughter of a Canaanitish man, whose name was Sava. And he took her, and went in to her. And she conceived and bore a son, and called his name Er. And she conceived and bore a son again, and called his name Onan. And she again bore a son, and called his name Silam, and she was in Casbi when she bore them. And Judas took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Thamar. And the firstborn of Judas, was wicked before the Lord, and God killed him. And Judas said to Onan, Go in to thy brother's wife, and marry her as her brother-in-law, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan, knowing that the seed should not be his, it came to pass when he went in to his brother's wife, that he spilled it upon the ground, so that he should not give seed to his brother's wife. And his doing this appeared evil before God, and he slew him also. And Judas said to Thamar, his daughter-in-law, Sit thou a widow in the house of thy father-in-law, until Silam my son be grown, for he said, Lest he also die as his brethren. And Thamar departed, and sat in the house of her father. And the days were fulfilled, and Sava the wife of Judas died. And Judas, being comforted, went to them that sheared his sheep, himself and Eros his shepherd the Odolamite, to Thamnah. And it was told Thamar his daughter-in-law, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Thamnah, to shear his sheep. And having taken off the garments of her widowhood from her, she put on a veil, and ornamented her face, and sat by the gates of Anan, which is in the way to Thamnah. For she saw that Silam was grown, but he gave her not to him for a wife. And when Judas saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, for she covered her face, and he knew her not. And he went out of his way to her, and said to her, Let me come in to thee, for he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me if thou shouldest come in to me? And he said, I will send thee a kid of the goats from my flock. And she said, Well, if thou wilt give me an earnest until thou send it. And he said, What is the earnest that I shall give thee? And she said, Thy ring, and thy bracelet, and the staff in thy hand. And he gave them to her, and went into her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and departed, and took her veil from off her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judas sent the kid of the goats by the hand of his shepherd the Odolamite, to receive the pledge from the woman, and he found her not. And he asked the men of the place, Where is the harlot who was in Anan by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot here. And he returned to Judas and said, I have not found her. And the men of the place say, There is no harlot here. And Judas said, Let her have them, but let us not be ridiculed. I sent this kid, but thou hast not found her. And it came to pass after 3 months, that it was told Judas, saying, Thamar thy daughter-in-law has grievously played the harlot, and behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judas said, Bring her out, and let her be burnt. And as they were bringing her, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, I am with child by the man whose these things are. And she said, See whose is this ring and bracelet and staff. And Judas knew them, and said, Thamar is cleared rather than I, forasmuch as I gave her not to Silam my son, and he knew her not again. And it came to pass when she was in labor that she also had twins in her womb. And it came to pass, as she was bringing forth, one thrust forth his hand, and the midwife having taken hold of it, bound upon hid hand a scarlet thread, saying, This one shall come out first. And when he drew back his hand, then immediately came forth his brother. And she said, Why has the barrier been cut through because of thee? And she called his name Phares. And after this came forth his brother, on whose hand was the scarlet thread, and she called his name Zara.